back to Matthew at that. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Hi. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for being here. I presume everyone's here for the Sustainable Manufacturing Workshop? Yeah, you didn't just wander in for water and coffee. So I'd like to get a sense of who's in the room before I get started. I'm going to introduce myself in case you're wondering who I am and didn't have a chance to Google. So how many of you work in design? Okay. How many of you work in sourcing? Sourcing. If you're primarily designer, you can put your hand up for everything, that's fine. Manufacturing, production, cool. Education? You're a student? Okay, student or teacher? Great. That's all I have. Did I miss anyone?
Product development.
Okay, I would have put that under design or production, but no. All right, great. Anyone else? Well, welcome. This is going to be a workshop on incorporating sustainable production into your business, but I would like to add a little caveat to that because in the workshop, I say that we'll learn about every aspect of the manufacturing process. We're only here for 2 hours. This has taken about 20 years of my life to work on, so I'm happy to share those 20 years with you over a lot of bottles of wine one day, but for today, we're going to do the best we can in the next 2 hours and try to get some new information into your hands so that you can go forth and prosper and bring sustainability strategies into your business, into your life, into your design, into your production in any way that you can. You may have also noticed that there is a table of materials at the back there. I'm going to explain why that's there, but one of the jobs that I do in New York is to research new sustainable materials that are either emerging on the market or that are existing on a commercial scale. Most of the contact information for the mills and the fabrics are on there, so you're welcome to take photos and contact the mills directly. If you have a specific need for one of the fabrics and you want to try to source it, my cards are also back there, so you can contact me and I will give you direct contact information, but it's usually easy to just find it through the website or the name of the mill. Some of the Italian mills are a little harder to contact, especially in the month of August when they're all on holiday, as we should all be. But other than that, they're generally pretty communicative. Anyone here from an Italian fabric mill? No, I wish. Anyway, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. This is me in my very early fashion days. Yeah. I grew up in Montreal. This is my first collection when I was 5 years old, so I've always wanted to be a designer. My mom gave this frame to me for a Christmas present a few years ago. I'd forgotten about it. The red scribbles are my brother. He did not have the same aspirations. Ironically, I feel like a lot of what I designed today looks very much like what I designed at 5 years old, which I think is a good thing, maybe not. I do one day plan to reproduce this collection exactly as is. That day hasn't happened yet. But here's what else I do. So back in 2004, I started a brand called Covet. It was for a company in Canada that wanted to enter the United States market, so they hired me to come down here and work on developing this brand. And this is exactly when my aha moment in sustainability happened. So we were producing everything overseas, primarily in India, China, and a little bit in other countries, but those were the two main countries. I was on a sourcing trip in Hong Kong. During one of my visits to the textile mills, I found an organic cotton fabric that I really liked. And so I went back to the hotel that night and started doing research on organic cotton, what it was, what the implications were. And I had had no education in sustainability. It wasn't a conversation when I was in school back in the 90s, and nor was it a conversation in any of the businesses I'd worked for. And so in 2004, there was starting to be a little bit of information online and within the mills. And so I started doing research on organic cotton. And it was really my, oh shit, what do I do now? Because my choices at that time were either leave the industry altogether because I had started to realize what impact I was having, or start to make a change. And so I obviously chose the latter because otherwise none of us would be here today. Well, you probably would be, but I wouldn't be. And so I started converting all of the supply chain for Covet over to organic materials. And that included organic cotton, organic linen, some locally sourced wools, hemp, tencel, and some bamboo, which we can talk about later. I have very strong opinions about bamboo. But for 5 years, I I converted that supply chain over to an organic and sustainable one, started talking about it, realizing that there was demand on the market for it, but also really a lot of interest from the consumers that we were selling to. And that is what led me to start Study New York, which was my brand that I currently have, started in 2009, so almost 10 years now. The difference with Study was that I wanted to do some research in local manufacturing. And local to me was New York City, where we have still some manufacturing, despite maybe some rumors that you've heard otherwise. But I also wanted to entertain the idea of zero waste. And so I called it Study because I wanted to explore every aspect of sustainable manufacturing. And so I did zero waste pattern making. And I started taking that into the brand with sustainable materials and local manufacturing. And so that's where my area of expertise is. I decided to take that to FIT and start teaching a class on sustainable textiles. But during that time, Study was awarded both Eco Domani Fashion Foundation and CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative for Sustainable Design. Yay. So it means that people are actually paying attention, but starting to put their money where their mouth is. And after that, I joined the Brooklyn Fashion and Design Accelerator, which is a Pratt initiative, even though I still work for FIT, and started teaching. So you'll notice that all the materials at the back come from the materials library that I built at the Pratt BFDA in order to help educate designers on new materials and help them source as consulting service. And then I also joined Fashion Revolution Board of Advisors in New York City branch. So this is me and a big page. But this is also my definition of sustainability. So development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. What really drives me, though, is this quote from Albert Einstein: "We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them," which is what led me to zero waste design thinking, what's really important to me, but also to a lot of the solutions that I find on a day-to-day as either a designer and an educator. So the reason you're all here today is to start asking questions. I imagine you do so on a daily basis, and to get some answers for those questions. And feel free to interrupt me at any point if you have a question. So don't wait for a Q&A at the end. If you have a question about something I'm talking about, you want clarification, you have a comment or an alternative suggestion, I'd love to hear it. So feel free to pipe in. Because a lot of these questions I would love to hear your opinions on as well. I'm going to give you my opinion and my research, but I'd love to hear and get a sense of where you're all at with your understanding of sustainability. So first question, as an industry, are we failing at incorporating sustainability into product design and innovation? Yes? Yes. Okay, I wasn't trying to lead you there, but yes. I think we are, but there is a positive here. I think there's also a lot of hope. There's a lot of different information that is now available on the market, and there's a lot of potential. So why is it so hard? Well, for a lot of reasons. One, because it's complex. The word sustainability is a very small word that encompasses a really big strategy. And that strategy is not just one thing. It's looking at natural resources, the environmental impact of what we do, human health and welfare, and social equity. And so that's the people that we work with. And so all of these things are things that we have to take into consideration if we want to call ourselves a sustainable brand, a sustainable designer, if we say we're doing something sustainably, which I think is really unfortunate, because when you look at brands that aren't doing things ethically, they don't have to label themselves. And so they have the benefit of just saying they're fashion. We have to say sustainable fashion, and I would like that to switch so that one day all of us can say we just work in fashion or in product design or product development, and they have to use the term unsustainable, unethical, because it's bulky, right? And I say the word sustainable maybe 300 times a day, and it's an awkward word to say. I value it, I think it's important, but I'd rather not have to say it. I would like the industry, I would like to be out of a job. I would like the industry to just not have to talk about sustainability anymore and just do it. It's not the reality yet, but we'll get there. So this is what a circular fashion supply chain should look like. I think this is what a lot of us want our supply chains to look like. So if you can't see it from the back of the room, I will go over it quickly. And don't worry, for all of you attending this, I'm not going to send out the slides, but I will send out all of the reference material. So I'll send links to everything to all of you at the end of the workshop. It may take me a couple days, but. So fashion supply chain. Raw material extraction, textile production, design, garment manufacturing, transportation, retail, a very happy consumer, if you can see them jumping for joy, which is what we want our consumers to look like, right? And then recycling rather than disposal. That is the ideal for a circular supply chain. Does this look new to anyone? No? That's great. I'm very happy to hear that. Sadly, this is what our supply chains currently look like and how complex they are. This is an actual image of a fashion supply chain. It's not. But what I would like to see is everything going to this. Right now, where we're at, and one of the reasons that it's so complicated is that we're looking at this. And oftentimes, there's a lot of disconnection. So for people who are doing everything from start to finish, design all the way through production, you maybe understand your supply chain a little bit better because you're very much embedded into it. But for those of you who work in larger corporations, big companies, oftentimes there's a disconnect. Next question, why should companies incorporate sustainability or circularity to product design? What are the benefits? What have been the paybacks? So, why should they? Well, first reason, everything you make returns to the earth as either food or poison. It's a really simple thought, right? So if you think of it that way, what are you putting back into the earth at some point, and how is it going back into the earth? But that may not be a good enough reason for everybody to take on sustainability as a strategy. We are now bombarded with, and I say bombarded, but I mean it in a good way, with images on social media giving us the demise of the planet and what we are doing currently to deteriorate the planet that we live on, the only one that we have. But we are also provided with information, if you look on the right, on how we can fix it. And it's usually simple tips. So this is positive to me. This is encouraging. This is something that I think means that we will potentially be able to educate consumers, educate designers, educate students, and have a very viable change in the industry. But if you're not doing it for that information, if you're not making sustainable design decisions to save the planet, maybe you're doing it to avoid bad press. That's fine. It's not the best reason, but it's a good reason. And people are paying attention. Press is paying attention, students are paying attention, consumers are really paying attention, and it's much, much harder to get away with things than it was 10, 15 years ago. Okay, so if you're not doing it for bad press, maybe you're doing it for good PR, and also money. So we're now starting to see a shift in the way consumers are consuming, right? And the word consumer is the other word that I really don't love to use on a regular basis. It is what reflects most of us as individuals who like to go out and buy things, and that could be anything from food to clothing to shelter. But the idea of consumption is that we buy something, we acquire it, we use it, and then it disappears. But that's not the reality in the apparel industry, right? Or in the fashion industry. We buy something, we use it, it doesn't disappear. It lives somewhere. It may live on in a friend's closet, ideal. It may live on in somebody else's home, but usually it lives on in landfill. So the idea of consumption is not real. We're actually using the things. We are borrowing them from the planet and have to take control over how we give them back. All right, so this is just one example. And then this is what I think. It's just common sense. So if we could take that word out, eco-fashion, and just call it fashion, I'd be very happy. All right, third question. Do sustainability practitioners and designers speak the same language? Maybe a little bit more now than before? How do we bridge the gap? How can we better educate designers? Well, for one thing, you're all here, so thank you. Great first step, or second step, or third step. So like I talked about before, this is really what the fashion industry is set up to look like. We work in isolation. So this might be a designer here, product developer there, production manager over here, and oftentimes there's not a lot of communication. Again, if you work for yourself and you do all of these things, you live in one cubicle. Great. It's not the reality for a lot of businesses. And so there's not a lot of communication between different parts of the business, and that's where there's a disconnect. So how do we get them to start speaking the same language? Well, first of all, everyone needs to have the same information, first and foremost. But also, everyone needs to start speaking to one another. Solution? Collaboration. And I would like to look at an example from nature for collaboration, because biomimicry is one of the things that I draw to. This one. So biomimicry is something I'll talk about later. If you're not getting at where I'm going with this analogy, I will draw it out for you. Rhino poacher is the big bad companies. The elephants represent the take-back program that a company will implement, but the elephant can't do everything on their own, right? Because they're just an elephant. They don't like to eat people. But lions do, and so they represent the new recycling technologies. Thank you. I worked really hard on this one. I'm going to give you a real example of collaboration in the fashion industry. You don't have to read this. It's going to be small type, I realize. But this is an email I received 3 years ago from a woman named Dana Davis, who works at Mara Hoffman. She's their head of sustainability and production. You will meet her tomorrow if you are attending the conference. So Dana sent out this email to a group of women who work in sustainable business in New York and possibly outside, telling everybody that they were going to be working with a company called Tipa out of Israel who make biodegradable packaging because they wanted to get rid of their poly bags, which are plastic-based. The problem was, and she doesn't mention this in the email, but the problem was that they had a high ordering minimum. And Mara Hoffman as a brand was admitting that they couldn't meet that minimum, but they really wanted to make this change in their business. So they were asking other brands to collaborate with them, join forces, and order together, which they succeeded in doing, and now their packaging is all biodegradable. If you want to see some of the packaging, I have it on the back. Don't get up now. I will give you some time to do that. But there is some of the packaging. It's far ahead what biodegradable packaging looked like 20 years ago. That brand that I mentioned that I worked for before, Covet, we had corn-based biodegradable packaging that didn't look nice. It looked like, it looked like the top of the coffee lids that are biodegradable. You know, they're that yellowish kind of non-transparent. This is way far ahead. So this is an example of real collaboration in the fashion industry, of people opening their sourcing, talking about what they're doing, not keeping it hidden. I don't know about you guys, but when I worked in fashion, or when I went to fashion school, we kept our books behind our hands, and everything was hidden because you didn't want the person next to you copying. When I worked in the industry at the very beginning, we weren't allowed to talk about our sources. We weren't allowed to talk about our supply chain. We certainly couldn't share it with other brands because we didn't want them poaching it. Remember the poaching? Yeah, it comes back. And so that's how I was raised in the fashion industry, and I'm very happy to not be part of that. And one of the things that will keep me in sustainability, besides the fact that I believe in it, is that it's such a welcoming, open community that you feel like you're part of something, whereas working in the conventional fashion industry, it's really hard to feel that way. All right, next question. What role do designers and product developers have in the process, and how influential are they? This is one of my favorite stats in the industry. Sustainable Apparel Coalition says that up to 80%, sometimes up to 90% of a product's impact is determined at the design phase. I think that's really empowering for designers, product developers. And within this design phase, I also include production, sourcing, product development, because all of that is really important in design. But I think it means that we have a responsibility as owners, as designers, as brand managers, to take responsibility of this and really understand what impact we have in the industry and how we can help improve that. Next, what ways are designers incorporating sustainability into their models? What good practices are we seeing in the marketplace? Well, that's why you're all here today. And this is going to be the biggest part of the workshop. And so bear with me. It's going to get heavy. But what I would like you to do is start to either take photos or notes, because what we're going to do is talk about 10 strategies for sustainable design that are, yes, you can take photos of this at this point because we are going to be following. And at the end of this, I'm going to ask you to choose 2. I'm not going to check that you're only choosing 2, so there's going to be some trust in the room. And I will put this back up and I will share it around so you'll be able to remember which ones they are. And we're going to go through each of these. If you have questions or if you're curious about something, please ask, because I'd like there to be transparency here. Good? Yeah. All right. And so at the end of the presentation for these 10, I'm going to have you all pick 2, and then we're going to do something different. First one, my favorite, design to minimize waste. So this is not just looking at zero waste pattern making, but it's also looking at waste in general in the fashion industry. So long life textiles, recycling, circular supply chain, multifunctional products. So that means designing something so that you don't need multiple products or that it doesn't become obsolete quickly. Zero waste cutting, which you see examples of on the right. Design for long and short life applications. So I'm going to explain that one a little bit, because if you're designing something for a long life application, yes?
Do you consider oil or use for transportation as part of the waste stream?
Not in this particular solution. It does come up later though, but good question. And then dematerializing, so using less materials. What I would recommend, so TED, who have put out this, and it's not the same as TED Talk organization, even though they have the same name. It stands for Textiles Environment Design, you see on there. You also see the number here. They put out a series of adorable little videos narrated by an Irishman who has a quaint accent to explain all of these with examples. So I definitely suggest you go have a look at those afterwards. I'm just going to talk about the basics because we don't have time to watch all the videos here today. But what you see on the right is 2 examples of zero waste pattern cutting by 2 people who have literally written the book on zero waste pattern making, Timo Rissanen and Holly McQuillan. It's a great book for those of you who are pattern makers or have an interest in pattern making or are maybe love Tetris. This is the book for you because it's definitely great. So you see a very simple version of zero waste on top and a much more complicated one in the lower part. Does this look familiar to everybody? Yes. So this is a pattern laid out on fabric. You see different sizes in the different colors. You can't see the yield for this, but it says it on the bottom. It's an 87% yield, which is considered really efficient in the fashion industry. Usually average is about 15%. But it still means that from this pattern, 13% is going to waste, which is going to landfill. So all these little white spaces in between the colors are textile waste. What happens with that? So this is an efficient pattern. But when we talk about waste in the fashion industry, we talk about this number 15%. It's really commonly spread as a number, right? The actual reality of waste in the fashion industry is not at all 15%. It's actually closer to 50%, 50. The reason for that is because there's a little bit of fabric at the end of this roll that didn't fit in the layout, right? Or maybe there was a roll of fabric that was delivered to the factory that was a little bit off color. And it didn't match the rest of the rolls. That goes to landfill. Maybe the print was offset. That didn't match, so that goes to landfill. Maybe the order was canceled midway through. So all of these problems actually add up to over 50% of textile waste going straight to landfill every year, which means natural resources, production time, labor, all going to the trash, which is tragic and hurts my soul because I have a textile background and really love textiles. I think they're the most important part of the process. That's my opinion, and would cry to see them go to landfill. You have a question?
Do you have a reference for that 50%?
The 50%? Yeah, I mean, it's actually somewhere between 50 and 60, but the Sustainable Apparel Coalition puts that out. Yeah. So this is a close-up of zero waste pattern. What you see on the left, the hoodie, is also from Timo Rissanen. On the right is a very complicated pattern for zero waste. This is not necessarily applicable on a large-scale manufacturing, but what it does is it makes us think about how waste is out there, and so how we can redesign from start. So usually what we would do is design this garment, never mind the pattern, but design a garment, find a fabric suitable for it, plug it in, make the pattern, cut it. What we're doing here is we're starting with the fabric. Again, I tell you, I come from a textile background, so I think this is really important. Start with the fabric. You understand the width of the fabric, how it works in the design, and then that is what feeds into the design. So it's a different way of thinking about production. It's a different way of thinking about design that is more holistic. Another solution, so that 15% that I showed you, all those little white bits in between the pattern, those usually go to landfill. So I know in New York City, we have to pay to have our trash picked up on a commercial scale, so not individuals, but at manufacturing level, all of our factories have to pay to have trash picked up. What we don't have to do is pay to have it recycled. So if a recycling company can come pick it up. This example is not from New York City, it's from Guatemala. It's a company called the New Denim Project. I'm actually wearing a shirt with their fabric today. And you can see more of their process and fabric in the back there. Again, not right now. But what they're doing is they're working very closely with a denim mill in Guatemala that's producing jeans for the American market. They're taking that 15% waste, cutting it up into fiber, so you'll see the fiber at the back, and then spinning new yarn and weaving new material out of that. So they're diverting that 15% waste from landfill and making a new quality product out of it. Which I think is really exciting. And this is all mechanical recycling, so there's no chemicals. What's also great is, as you can see, no dye, because they're using the original color that's already from the jean. So all of their fabrics are blue and white. The white comes from recycled cotton, raw cotton, and the blue comes from the recycled denim. Second one, was there any questions about the zero waste? No, great. So like I said, just feel free to interrupt with questions if you have them. Second one, design for cyclability. So this is looking at the entire life cycle of your product and how it can be designed. One of my favorite new examples is a company that just launched last year called 4 Days, based out of LA. It's a t-shirt company, and they are making GOTS certified organic cotton t-shirts that can then be taken back and recycled. So how many of you have heard of 4 Days and understand? Great, so I definitely urge you to look it up. I think it's a great company. So essentially it's like the original Netflix model where you'd get DVDs in the mail. Does anyone remember that, or am I definitely aging myself? Yeah, okay. I think you can still do that, I've been told, but I haven't seen it. So basically what they do is they send you the t-shirts. When you're done with them, maybe they have stains, or maybe they're shrunk, or maybe you just don't like the color anymore. Instead of discarding it, you send it back to them, and you just pay a refresh fee, and you get a new t-shirt. Not made from your old personal t-shirt, but made from their own supply of t-shirts. Yeah?
What do they do with the old ones?
They chop them up, recycle them, and make new ones.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I think it's great. I wish, yes?
Is the quality of the ones that they chop up and recycle as good as the...
So they say it will be, but they haven't been around long enough to take anything back yet. They are also taking, so when they send you the label to take back their old t-shirts, you can also send back other things that are 100% cotton. So it has to be 100% cotton. So this is a great solution for things that we don't usually want to recycle, like old stained t-shirts. I think eventually socks, underwear, they're going to be taking on things like that. Yeah?
Is that within their own business they recycle it, or do
Yes.
they have another party that does that?
No, it's all done within their business. Yeah. All right, so design for recycling, upcycling. So essentially they're designing a monomaterial product, 100% cotton, in order to be able to recycle it into a new monomaterial product, which is 100% recycled cotton, right? So they're not adding in a different fiber to make it more complicated to recycle. At the present stage, we really can't recycle blended fibers, although that's potentially changing in the near future. But it's much simpler if you're at the design phase, thinking about what the end of life of that product is going to be. Design for disassembly or closed loop systems, again, this example, and thinking reusable, non-invasive installation or renewal. So also thinking about the end of life of your product. So not just thinking about getting it to the consumer phase, but what happens when the consumer doesn't want it anymore and it's no longer viable. Another example of this is Eileen Fisher's Waste No More program, which keeps changing names, but also is a great program. So what this has done, I think, surprisingly to them, has fed back into their design. So they started taking back their clothes several years ago. They now have hundreds of thousands of units, a lot of which are being recycled, but they're looking for solutions across the board for all of the things. What's great is that they've started understanding flaws in their original designs because they're taking back all of their own clothes. So they see where the wear happens. They see if there's tears in the same inner leg of a pant. They see if the same zippers are breaking all the time. And so they start to understand where they need to make improvements, not in the second life design phase, but in the original design phase. And so this part of their program, which is earning them several $1 million in revenue every year, is also feeding back into their core collection of product and allowing their main designers, because they have a separate group of designers working in this section, to be able to really look at the way they're designing and think about the end of life of that product as well. Can it be recycled? Can it be remade into something new? What are the implications of using this fiber versus that fiber? So it's asking questions on a holistic level from the design phase. Yeah, sorry.
This is obvious, but what is GOTS?
GOTS, so is the GOTS certification. So it's one of the certification bodies for organic textiles. It's the Global Organic Textile Standard. Yeah. Yes?
Are they able to utilize the same color palette in the second design phase?
At Eileen Fisher?
Yeah.
Are they able to utilize?
Like the same color palette?
So they're sorting, and if any of you are in New York, I definitely recommend going on a tour of their, what they call the mini factory upstate. It's beautiful. So they are sorting everything that they take back by color and reusing it that way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They're not mixing.
They're not
Mixing colors.
They are. So if you look here, this shirt is made from linen pants and it's color blocked, which actually is not something that Eileen Fisher does in their main line. If you're familiar with Eileen Fisher, it's very monochromatic, single color. But in the Renew line, they are doing color blocking. Yeah. Do you have a question?
I just listened to
Yeah.
And she said they have to take like old patterns from larger pieces of apparel. They can't resell them as is and feed those back in for productivity.
Yeah, that's correct. So they're looking at everything. They're taking back, but as well as their own textile waste. All right, next strategy is designed to reduce chemical impacts. So the easiest solution for this one is organic cotton, right? But of course, organic cotton has its own problems. It's not the be-all and end-all for sustainability, primarily because of its water use and accessibility. But we're also looking at chemical solutions in the industry like natural dyes. So you see the lower example, or mechanical technologies to create versions of things that we would ordinarily would have used chemicals for. So for example, if you look on the right, there's laser finishing as opposed to chemical bleaching, right? Or for those of you who are familiar with burnout or devore on fibers, that's usually a chemical process that can also be done by laser. So yes, not a perfect solution because the laser obviously takes a lot of energy, but for this particular solution, and this is going to be important when I have you choose your solutions, we're just looking at reducing chemical impacts. So if reducing chemical impacts is important for you, what I would recommend is looking at organic cotton as an option, looking at natural dyes as an option. They are all going to have their problems. And maybe something I should mention in the world of sustainability is there is no one perfect solution. There's no one strategy, right? It's always a question of pros and cons, balancing. Yes?
Are you going to dive into the pros and cons of natural dyes?
I won't specifically because, again, like 20 years. But yeah, natural dyes versus synthetic dyes both have their pros and cons, just like everything does. If we want to do a quick talk about it or like a quick burner notes. So synthetic dyes, obviously petrochemicals. Natural dyes come from plants, minerals, roots, but also require mordanting, which is not entirely natural, as well as a lot of heat and water. So, but it also falls under another category, which is artisanal techniques and preserving. So there are those pros and cons depending on what you want. There's a great natural dyer in Seattle, Kathy Hattori, who has a company called Botanical Colors. If you are looking for research, or if you're looking for natural dyes, she does the dyeing, but she also sells the raw dye stuff. And that's not listed in the resources. So Botanical Colors. Next one. So this is, contrary to the previous one, designed to reduce energy and water use. I think these could be separate. So if you want to only choose one of the two, you are welcome to. Sometimes when I present this, I say 4A, 4B, because you can focus entirely on energy or entirely on water, and you don't have to necessarily look at both, but obviously using water also uses energy, so you can reduce both in the same time. So this is looking at designing for no launder or low launder, textiles that have a short life, coatings to reduce the need for washing. Obviously those have their problems as well because they are usually synthetic coatings, and localized production, and then natural energy systems, which we don't have availability for everywhere in the world. One of my favorite examples of this is actually not even in the production phase, but it's in the consumer-facing phase. It's a program or ad campaign that Nudie Jeans put out a few years ago. So Nudie Jeans is now using entirely organic cotton in their supply chain. I think they're at 100%. But this was an ad campaign that they put out several years ago to educate their consumers on water use in the use phase of the life cycle of denim. So if we look at the two main things that we wear, especially here in America, but pretty much globally now, is the t-shirt and jeans, right? And so I'm not wearing that, neither are most of you, but I think if we walk out and do a poll in the world, that's what we would see. And those are also the things that require the most wash, or that people tend to wash the most. And so Nudie wanted to teach their customers not to wash their jeans as much. And instead of telling them how much water was being wasted, how much chemicals were going into the water stream, all the negative environmental impacts, they decided not to do any of that. And they took this strategy of just telling them they didn't need to wash their jeans. And the hope was that they would be able to educate their consumers on a subconscious level, and also have them question what they were doing with their other clothes. And one of the problems that we see in the world, primarily with microfibers, is through the wash phase, right? And so you've all heard of these oceans of plastic that we're seeing. A lot of that is not, I won't say entirely, but a lot of that is coming from the wash phase that consumers have, and also the detergents that we're using, which are way too harsh for what we need. And so Nudie Jeans took this approach, which I think is really cute. I don't know if you can see it from the back, but what it does is asks their customers how many days, or I think I have a pointer on here. Yes, I do. Ask their customers how many days they've been wearing their jeans. If it says every day for 1 month, likely too early to be washing it, unless your mom says they're dirty and they smell, and she's right, so it's time to wash them. But they're looking all the way up to 6 months, which I think is a little bit long to not wash your jeans, but that's me. Somewhere in the middle there. But ultimately what this was supposed to do was a tongue-in-cheek way to educate their consumers without bombarding them with all the negative information about sustainability, which ultimately became much more important to them. Next strategy was design that explores clean, better technologies. So a lot of that we mentioned earlier because it also is in the energy conservation, but it comes back here as a separate one. So the two examples I have here are two of my favorites in the end-of-life recycling phase. So Evernew, which is a Seattle-based company, and Worn Again, which is a London-based company, both doing very similar chemical recycling technology for blended and cotton fibers. So what they're able to do is separate the polyester from cotton, which is in most of our t-shirts and other clothes, with some amount of contamination. So like, let's say you have a cotton polyester sweatshirt with a little bit of Lycra. They can separate out the Lycra. This is really revolutionary because it doesn't exist on the market yet. So they're pre-launch companies, but they're looking at building facilities to be able to do this. That's super exciting for me because it means not only are they being able to recycle fiber, which is what you see at the production stage, but they can also take back our clothes when we're done with them and put them into recycling and make a new fiber, or in both cases, make two new fibers. So one would be a polyester fiber, one would be a recycled cotton fiber. This also includes tagging and smart devices like RFID, which is important. Obviously, having technology embedded into your clothes has some sustainability issues because we're putting metals and such in our clothes. But it's also really important for transparency in the supply chain and being able to track things from the start. Transparency being one of the key issues that I think we should be talking about on a general scale when we talk about sustainability. Also looking at digital printing versus screen printing, water jet, reduced impact in every phase of the production. Another example here would be Gina Logias, who's doing laser etching on jeans. If you're not familiar, my early stage background in the fashion industry is actually working for several denim companies. So when I started out in the industry, and I didn't even realize how toxic this was, I was visiting denim factories in China, walking around with blue stained water all over the floor, most of the employees not wearing any shoes, hand scratching all of these little whiskers, which is also ridiculous because those happen naturally, but that's the way fashion works. So hand scratching all of these whiskers with sandpaper with all the little cotton and dye microfibers in the air, so very little ventilation. Now, of course, the alternative is to be able to do this with laser. So much faster, much less need for hand work, but the energy implication obviously comes into play here. So there are alternatives, but what I was talking about is sustainability. It's always a question of checks and balances. You never have one perfect solution. You have a solution that works for you based on, and this is why I'm asking you to choose based on your personal preferences. Next one, biomimicry and design from nature and history. So this one has a lot of different strategies here. The first one and the most easy to understand, so you remember my lion example. This is actually a more clear example of biomimicry. So for those of you who don't know where Velcro comes from, it's actually a perfect example of biomimicry. It's the inventor of Velcro was walking in a field with his dog one day and through these burrs, or walking in a field of burrs, and at the end of their walk he noticed that these burrs were stuck to his dog. So he decided to examine the burr close up through a microscope and found that the burr itself had a little hook on it, and obviously the dog's fur was soft and fibrous, and so he invented Velcro, forgot to patent it. Really sad, I know. So if you come up with something great, patent it. Forgot to patent it, so never made a penny off of it, which was really sad, but we ended up with a great product called Velcro. Yeah.
But I feel like, yes, if you're trying to make money, but also at the same time, if you're inventing something that's really sustainable and really good for the environment,
Yeah.
then maybe you should share it with people.
Okay, fine. We will open source everybody's inventions for this purpose.
Tesla has open sourced all their patents.
All right, we're not going to go into patenting today. Forget I said anything. All right, so Velcro, perfect example. Also looking at new technologies like spider silk, which is not actually made by or from spiders. It is a synthesized protein made right here in the United States. But this strategy also includes a lot of different very DIY hand solutions. So austerity repair, which means when you have to repair things because you can't find alternatives. Make, do, and mend, which is becoming very popular. DIY and punk customization. Dyeing and printing techniques to rejuvenate old artisanal processes. So one of the examples right here is the Renewal Workshop, which is working with companies to give a second life to their products. So this is based right here in Portland, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely something worth looking into as individuals and brands as a solution. Another one based in New York is a new company called Altered Clothing. So they're working both with brands themselves as well as with individuals to offer an on-demand alteration service. So let's say you buy something online and it doesn't fit perfectly well, but it fits well enough to keep it because you don't need a different size. But maybe you need the pants hemmed a little bit because they're a couple inches too long. That happens to me all the time. Rather than bringing them to a local tailor, which might be difficult to find depending on where you're located, Altered works directly with these brands to offer an alteration service where you send the product to one of their tailors who are working mothers who work from home, who are often either refugees or recently located to New York City primarily. That's where they're launching the business, but are going to be expanding to other markets. And then that gets sent right back to the consumer. You can also do this with your stuff at home. So you just contact them, you order an alteration, they send you a bag, it gets shipped directly to the alteration. They send you a bag with pins and measuring tape so that you can pin it directly. You can pin your garment to understand, so they understand how to alter it. So you can do everything from basic shortening your pants to sewing on a button. I hope you all know how to sew buttons on and can teach people in your family and friend group, but if you don't, this comes into handy, all the way to tailoring blazers and coats and things that are much more complicated. So this is a new service that's just launching this year. Next example, design for ethical production. So this one obviously big topic, ethical production. Very basic solution here would be fair trade materials and production. So looking at fair trade certification. If you can't have fair trade certification because it's not the easiest or most accessible for everybody, also looking at direct supply chain for your production methods, working directly with artisans, working with handcrafters, natural dyers, weavers, working in local communities and considering local resources, which are not that available here in the United States, but we do have some fiber. You'll see some of it back there on the table as well, but we do have some fiber that is available. We have weavers here, one of them being Houston Textiles in Northern California, so they're using entirely US-based supply chain, either organic cotton or climate beneficial wool from the United States, mostly from Northern California, Nevada, Oregon, and they're able to process everything and use vintage looms to weave. Yes.
What's the name of this one?
Houston Textiles, spelled Huston. You'll see some of the swatches on the back table. One of the examples here is a new collaboration between Madewell and J.Crew actually, and Fair Trade certified product. They're making this at Cytex with their denim, but they're just decided to roll this, they just announced that they were rolling this out last week, so it's a brand new initiative, and hopefully will grow more and more within their denim. Okay, next one. So these last three are a little bit outside of the realm of traditional design and development, but I think they're really important. So designed to reduce the need to consume. This one is still really looking at the process of design itself. So emotionally durable design, that one means that your customer is going to want to keep the product for a long time. So luxury goods in theory should fall into this category, although they don't always. But as long as the product is well made and can connect with the consumer. So maybe the way that it's made, maybe you made it yourself and the person that you sold it to who bought it at a fair had a great conversation with you, talked to you about themselves, and that's creating an emotional connection between designer. How are brands able to scale that at a bigger stage and not have to sell one thing at a time through craft fairs? There are ways to do it, and that's primarily by making something that your consumer can connect to. Slow fashion or slow design is the equivalent of the slow food movement, so knowing everything from farm to finished product. Harder to do in the fashion supply chain, but still possible. Consumer participation in co-design, I have strong opinions about that. I'm not sure all consumers should become designers. It's just me. There are good iterations of this on the market where consumers can choose colors, can choose finishing, choose fit, alter their fit a little bit. So we do see it. And then apps for bespoke information, which are becoming more and more possible while technology is becoming easier for body scanning and whatnot. And then multifunctional convertible design, which is the example you see on the right here, which is called the Uniform Project, launched before Instagram, which is unfortunate because it would have been a perfect project for Instagram. So this person, a New York-based graphic designer, decided she didn't want to consume anything for an entire year, which is a very common thing for people to take on. Has anyone taken on this challenge? No consumption for a year? No? Oh, well, there's always time. It's difficult, so she decided to design and make a dress. Full disclosure, she actually made 7 of them, so she would have one for every day of the week, but it was the same exact dress. It was convertible, which meant multifunctional. You could wear it front to back. It had buttons down one side, so she could wear it as a jacket here, and then she only styled it with things that were already in her closet that were either vintage or sustainable. She posted a picture of herself on her website every day for a year to show people that they didn't have to buy new things to have new looks, and she never repeated a look. She also started raising money to build an orphanage in India, which is where she was originally from. They ended up raising over $150,000 at the end of the project, at the end of the year, and started selling the dresses too, or the patterns for the dresses rather, which is more interesting. Yeah, and all pre-Instagram. So you can imagine what kind of notoriety this would have gained if we had had it. One of the saddest facts that I've seen is the average consumer bought 60% more clothing in 2014 than in 2000, but kept each garment half as long. Anyone have any ideas on why we kept it half as long? There's a few different answers to this.
Because of how fast trends.
Exactly, good one. So how fast trends are happening? Lower quality products, yeah. Those are pretty much the 2 big ones. And that's a very short time span. So looking at that, what happens to all these garments that we're not keeping half as long? And remember that stat at the beginning is if we kept a garment 2 years versus 1, we'd reduce the carbon emissions by 26%, but we're not. We're doing the opposite. We're keeping it half as long. So looking at number 9, design to dematerialize and develop systems and services. This is looking outside of the realm of actually product development, so not making anything new, but making systems and services that can help us expand our reach. So this can be within brands or can be outside. One of the great examples here is Global Fashion Exchange, which hosts swap shops all over the world, where you bring products to the swap. Has anyone done swap? Great. You can do it with your friends. You can do it on a bigger scale. The last swap that they had was actually in Madison Square Garden in New York. I think 10,000 people attended. I can't even understand the scale of that, but they also do it on a smaller scale. And they opened the first swap shop in Brooklyn where you bring products in. They assign a number of points for you, and then you can shop from within their categories using the points that you have. So there's no money exchanging hands at all. But this also encompasses lease programs, share, repair. So Rent the Runway would fall under this category as a system and a service. There is actually some information starting to come out from this telling us that designers have the capability of making just as much money from one product by leasing it over the course of several years, if they're leasing it themselves, of course, than they would from producing 10 garments of that same product. So that's really interesting information on a brand scale, because I think one of the pushbacks to this as designers is that they're not selling as much because somebody's going to lease it. Ultimately, there's obviously other opinions to that.
$1 billion right now.
Rent the Runway? Very possible. And then there are a lot of other companies popping up in the same category. What's really interesting is there a lot of college campuses are starting to implement this from within, so you can rent from your peers on the campus, so there's no shipping, which is really cool too as a solution. I don't know what the names of those sites are called, but I've seen a couple of them pop up that are really college central, so within very small communities. So the emissions for that are also reduced because you're not shipping. You're usually even just delivering it yourself to the person. They're borrowing it that way. They're less likely probably going to damage it or stain it because they've met you in person and they know that it's your product. So you're renting out your own wardrobe rather than things that you didn't make, things that you made. Yes. Yes.
A lot of grad students where I go to school
Mhm.
do that.
A lot of grad students do that?
Yeah.
Formally through an app or just informally?
Just informally.
Great.
Meet at the college bar and barter.
Barter swap?
Yeah.
And do you take it back after? No, you're just trading.
We'll trade, and if we want to take it back, then
Yep.
we'll have to bring something else.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great. I used to do it with my friends a lot in New York, and we'd have, if two people wanted to take the same thing, we'd have to do a walk-off, and then everybody else would vote. It's really intimidating. I stopped doing it. But yeah, could be fun. All right, another solution here for end of life is a company called Make It Black, obviously, just like it says. For those of you who haven't guessed, it's a dye service where you can over-dye your clothes black. Why black? Because, well, it's based in New York. Everybody wears black. But also because for practical solutions, black is the only color that overdyes every other single color. So if you have a crazy print, or if you somehow decided that fluorescent yellow was your color for the season, it's not, pretty much for anyone besides Beyonce. So you can send it to this service and have a second life for your own clothes. Maybe you have something that's black, but it's faded a little bit, right? So you overdye it black, you're creating a second life. And this is also accessible for brands who have overstock. So it's a B2B and B2C service where brands can work with Make It Black to overdye their overstock and resell it as brand new product. And it dyes, the difference between this and like getting a bottle of Rit dye in your bathtub, well, one, it saves your bathtub. Two, that kind of dye process doesn't dye everything. So you're not dyeing your threads or your trims, zippers, buttons. This dye process is proprietary and dyes everything black. So everything from zippers to threads to dye. So the only thing they're not dyeing is fine furs, evening wear, I think leather. There's a few categories, obviously, but everything else can be dyed any fiber. Sorry? So the chemical process is being recycled, but it's not natural dye, obviously, because black is very difficult to get in natural dyes and very water intensive. So she's doing research right now at Second Life for this dye process to be able to not only capture the dye, but also use a lot less water. But we can't talk about that because it's all proprietary. All right, last one is design activism. Most people have difficulty with this one because it's completely outside of the realm of design itself, but still really important. So one of the easiest solutions, or one of the easiest iterations of this would be Fashion Revolution, which we're in the right week for Fashion Revolution. It is Fashion Revolution week or month or year. But this was a product of a call for transparency in the fashion industry, how things are made and where. But what you see on the right here is more of an artist's iteration. So you might recognize the name Timo Rissanen, who is the person who wrote the book on zero waste pattern. He's also a professor at Parsons in New York. And he put together an art project called 15%, which was an installation that he did first at Parsons and then it traveled around the world. He had a paid employee or paid student actually sit in the installation, so it was a live installation, and she was all day long cutting and sewing t-shirts. So what you can see here is a basic white organic cotton t-shirt. The cotton was donated from a local supplier. She was cutting out the t-shirts and hand sewing each one. It took her about 45 minutes to do it at the end of the project. And then each one was numbered, so you can see here it was a little stamp with the number. But what she was doing at the end of sewing each one is she would package them up in these bags along with the waste that was created from the cutting and sewing of the t-shirt. And then they would sell it in the museum gift shop or in the store for the same price as an H&M t-shirt in that town. So this one says euros because I think this is a photo from the edition they did in Finland, but in New York they were selling it for I think $4.95, which obviously you had to, as a customer, to buy the t-shirt, you had to watch the whole process happen. So you were standing there for 45 minutes to an hour, knowing full well that it was taking her that long to make this product and that you were paying way under minimum wage, let alone not even including the materials and all of the resources. So the idea here was to shed light on manufacturing. Of course, it doesn't take the average garment worker 45 minutes to make a t-shirt. It's much less than that. So there is a little bit of disparity there, but the idea is that you are taking home all the waste, you're understanding what the entire process looks like. More importantly, and I think what was surprising in the aftermath of this exhibit was that people were realizing that clothes were made by human hands. I think there is still some misconception that we have robots that we're hiding away somewhere that are making clothes. A lot of consumers do believe that. I know there are some now that are starting to be developed, hopefully not too many in the near future, but right now most of our clothes, or if not all of our clothes, are being made by human hands, and a lot of people don't realize that. And so that was the main focus of that, as well as highlighting waste in the industry. But then we also include social media, manifestos, open source networks, right? And exhibits, publications, blogs, et cetera, et cetera. So this one, of course, can be taken on by brands in some level to educate. And we might even put the nudie jeans example in this category as well, because it is essentially a version of a manifesto. But each brand in itself should have a manifesto. I didn't print the whole one, but I urge you to go look at the manifesto that Fashion Revolution has put out, especially timely for this week. Very important. So, that said, what I would like to do now is ask you what your approach to sustainable design is. Don't answer me, but instead take 2 minutes to write it down. So choose which ones of these 10 you're going to. And over the next 2 minutes, if you have any questions, I'd love you to ask them so we can clarify what they are. If you don't remember one of them, happy to go back to it. But I will give you 2 minutes to pick just 2, write it down on a piece of paper. Yes? Just in general, that's a huge question, and it really depends on which of these you're looking at. So the question was, would you consider natural fibers versus synthetic fibers more sustainable? That term, more sustainable, I find very difficult to attack, but I think it really is up to you. So I would never recommend just regular synthetics. I would always veer you towards recycled synthetics. There are some good examples in the back. And I promise I'm going to let you go back there and have a look at them in a couple minutes. But I'm not going to answer that and give you a lead because I want you to pick of which is important and then decide from there. My personal preference is natural, but that's just an aesthetic preference more than anything else. Yeah.
Design activism.
Yes. Design activism was the last one. So the Fashion Manifestos, blogs, information systems. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question. This is something you talked about. Is there a conference for sustainable fashion that where you could see an exhibition floor where you could see new technologies?
Yes, that's a great question. So for materials primarily, there is one in London called the Future Fabrics Expo. So the question was, is there a conference where you can see new technologies? There's starting to be a lot. So Tex World in New York has a section of it that it has Future Fabrics and Technologies. Future Fabrics Expo in London also does that. They may be coming to New York sometime later this year, so I would keep an eye out on that. Those are the 2 I would point to. Oh, there's also Textile, which is another good one. That kind of moves around, but it was most recently in North Carolina.
What was that?
Textile, TECHTEXTIL. Yeah, it's a German trade show that has a US component to it.
What was the first one?
First one was Tex World in New York. Yeah. Any other questions about these? Has everyone chosen? Anyone not chosen?
What if we don't have a piece of paper?
Tablet? Or just remember the 2 numbers? Yeah, I have faith you can do that. All right, yeah.
What if you own like a marketplace and you're not very involved in the production?
Okay, These
still,
these very much in your category, right? The design activism, so that's information systems. And then also marketplace would be, you'd have systems. Do you have a take-back program in your marketplace, potentially? Or are you hosting events, right? So yeah, but it's also, this doesn't have to apply directly to your businesses or your brands. This could be a personal choice that you're making for yourself and you're just interested. All right, so I don't have an exact count of how many people are in the room, but what we're going to do now, and during this time I will have you go back to look at the materials, maybe not everybody at the same time, but what we're gonna do is you're gonna have to get up, not everybody at the same time, but you're going to separate into groups based on, so 10 groups, obviously, based on these different categories. So there are, I believe, 10-ish areas that we can separate, so let's consider one table, one group, right? I'm gonna go through each category, and then what I would like you to do is have maximum 5 to 6 people in each group. The other thing is, if you came with coworkers or colleagues, I'd like you not all to be in the same group. I would like you to separate. That might apply to some of you. Actually, yes, we're gonna divide into groups first, and then I'm gonna go over the rest of the exercise. I think that might be easiest, so I'll give you some time to separate. So, first one, design to minimize waste. Put your hands up higher. Don't be shy. Okay, so that's a lot of you. Actually, I'm going to, because you put your hand up first. You're going to be in charge of that group, all right? We're going to do this so that the groups will come up to the front, and then if you see that there's too many people in that group, so more than 6, choose your second choice. Is that good? Yeah. I know there's going to be almost nobody in number 10. There never is, so that's okay. But if there are some of you, that'd be great. What? There might be? Okay. There's one person. All right, number 2. Okay, still good. So you're going to come up and everyone's going to join you. Number 3. Okay. I'm obviously being lazy here. Front row, I will move over, I promise. Number 4. Design to reduce energy and or water. All right. Really? Seriously? Did anyone have number 4 as a second choice? Okay, you've got some people. All right, so this is yours. I'm going to leave it up here for you. Number 5, design to explore cleaner technologies. That was your number 2? Okay, that's fine too. So maybe I'll have you pick number 5 instead, just in case there are too many people. Number 6, design that takes models from nature. Yeah, okay. Did anyone have number 6 as a second option? Okay, great. Design for ethical production, number 7. Great. Number 8, design to reduce the need to consume. Ooh, more than usual. I like this. Great. There you go. Design to develop systems and services. Number 9. Okay, so that's going to be you. I'll leave this up here. And then number 10, design activism. Yay! All right, this is really exciting. Nobody ever picks this one. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being accommodating. I really appreciate it. So now let me walk you through what's about to happen. All right? You are going to redesign a garment. And the reason we didn't tell you this in advance is because we don't want to bring something that you could think about. You're going to redesign an existing garment that one of you is wearing or an accessory that one of you brought. So it doesn't have to be just a wearable garment. Using more sustainable methods, textiles, trims, and finishes. You're going to examine your garment and list out all of the materials in the supply chain. The best way to do that is 1, if you know where it was made. It's a little bit cheating. 2, looking at the label, right? And looking at the country of origin. You're obviously not going to know necessarily where the yarn came from or where the fiber came from unless you have a very, very intricate label, which I would love for everybody to have, but we don't. So you're going to map out as much of the supply chain as you can tell from the label or from what you know, if it's something you did make. What I will ask is that it's not a single fiber product, like a basic white cotton t-shirt. I would like something that has either a trim or an embellishment on it, has at least 2 materials. So those materials don't have to be in the fiber or the fabric. It could be like a trim, could be a separate finishing, could be a combo material, something like that. Yeah? All right, so as a group, you're going to decide where you can make improvements. You're going to decide if it needs all of the original design elements, and then what can you do at the end of life of this product. So you are redesigning this product. What you're also going to do is think about how you can make improvements using sustainable thinking, so listing out the materials next to the original list. So you can do this on a small piece of paper. You have your original list of supply chain items, so all of your products, all of your fibers, as far as you know, the country of origin, so you're looking at shipping and transportation. And then next to that list, you're going to do the new list. So you're going to map out the new supply chain. So where are you going to produce this? How is it going to be produced? What kind of labor? What kind of transportation? And you're going to sketch out any design changes. So you can actually physically sketch them out, or you can just list them out. I don't actually need you to be redrawing anything unless you feel comfortable doing so. And then you're also going to consider how you communicate the garment's sustainability, if at all. There's no mandatory need to do that, but if you would like to communicate it, how will you do that? What I don't have here is that you can also take price into account. So if this is a fast fashion garment, are you going to keep it at the same price level as a fast fashion garment? Little disclaimer, that might be really hard, i.e. impossible to do, but do you want to keep it at the same price level as it originally was? Potentially you will know that because you hopefully bought it, but you can guess otherwise, or maybe do some research online. I'm going to give you some tools though, so you're not going to be completely alone to do this. So 3 tools that I'm going to give you that you can have access to if you have a phone or a computer with you and Wi-Fi, which you should be able to get. One is the Sustainable Paralitions Higg MSI Index, which is very complex. And so if you just take a photo of that link, but I can also put it back up. So this will allow you to compare and contrast different fibers and fabrics for different categories like chemical use, water use, waste, transportation. I imagine some of you are familiar with this. Anyone? Yes. Yes. All right, next tool, which you're also going to be familiar with, is an app that Nike has put out called the Making app, based very similar to the previous one, but might be a little bit more accessible and easier to use. Also allows you to compare for water, waste, chemistry, and energy. So you're comparing 2 different materials if you want kind of like a quick access to which one is better really easily, right? Third one, which may be harder, is the Brooklyn Fashion and Design Accelerator, where I currently work, has also put out a tool that I'm giving you a free 5-month trial for, which is generally only for members, but if you follow that link for registration, you'll get free access. It also gives you supply chain information on all the fibers if you go to the fiber area of this tool. So I can show you how to do that if you're not sure, but it's pretty self-explanatory once you register. All right, so I know that's a lot. Last thing is, maybe as groups, you can each get up to go to see the materials in the back. I think it might be best to do it little bits and pieces, so a few minutes each group. Or if you want to send one person, they're going to be there after the presentation, so if you want to spend more time looking and taking pictures, I'm not leaving right away, so don't worry about that. You'll have plenty of time, but just in the effort of saving time, I want to be able to do all of this. After that, what you're going to do, and these, if you look on the back of your number of your group, you're going to see questions to consider. All right, so all of these questions are something to consider when you're redesigning your product. At the end of this redesign work product, you're going to do, each group will share their redesign with the room for questions and feedback. So it's going to be a quick share at your tables. That means you all get to come up front or maybe stand at your tables and do it. And you have about 20 minutes. All right? Go. And I'll be walking around. So I'm going to have you rejoin your groups. Everyone face forward because each group is going to come up and do a little mini presentation, talk about the original product. I'd say have 1 person or 2 people from the group talk. Otherwise, it's going to get really distracting, but everybody from the group should come up. Talk about the original garment, focus on where your changes were, and then what the new design is going to look like. And we're going to try to limit it to 3 or 4 minutes per group. Please feedback, comments, questions from everybody else in the room, because I think that's where there's most value when there's that collaborative effort. And we're going to go in order of number. I'm sorry. So you guys are first. Yeah. You all have to come up, but you don't all have to present. And whoever's talking, I'm going to stand next to you so we can capture it on the mic, because I'm mic'd. Yeah. All right, so actually, I'm going to go back to your strategy, too. Not that you necessarily used it, but we'll leave this one up. Okay. Take it away.
So we decided to evaluate my blazer. It is a Liberty print from J. Crew. It's currently a 100% cotton plain weave woven body and body lining with 100% polyester plain weave sleeve lining. There are gold buttons on the front here, as well as smaller gold buttons on the sleeves. There is twill tape on the inside, as well as additional pockets on the inside and on the outside. So the first thing that we talked about was the fabric. So we decided to keep it as a woven to have the clean appearance and the nice printing, but we decided to change it to a recycled polyester, keeping it as a plain weave to again keep the smooth face, but also because the polyester does have a little bit better strength and abrasion resistance than the cotton, which would allow it to have a longer life as a garment.
For trims, we talked about removing the pockets because I noticed that the pockets were still sewn shut, so Debbie has never used the pockets on her jacket, so we're going to take those off of there. There's also unused pockets on the inside we were removing just to get better consumption on the yield for the production marker. We're going to take off our sleeve buttons, but we do want to keep the striped trim on the inside because we feel like that's really part of the look of the garment, so we don't want to lose the branding. We're also going to change our label to a screen print label in the back so we can eliminate the twill tape in there. And then for our hang tag, we talked about printing on seed paper. It's some stuff I found at a packaging convention last month. It's paper that you can plant with seeds in it. Okay. And we talked about reusing our scraps and making them into coin purses. So taking our cutting table scraps and repurposing them back together and reusing them. What else? Did I get everything? Yeah. We want to make sure that our factory is also fair wage because it's made in the Philippines.
In the Philippines?
Yes.
Okay. And anything else? Because it's all being converted to recycled poly now, right?
Yes.
So end of life, it could be taken back and recycled again?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
That's good. Any other comments, questions? Yeah? The only thing I would add to that, if you are going to go the poly route, is you could also do waterless dyeing with it, which could be really interesting, even though that's getting into another group. Yeah. But great. Okay, good job. You can put your jacket on now. Number 2. Who's presenting? Are you presenting?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stand awkwardly next to you so I can get your voice on the recording.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So we decided to review this printed smock, I guess. It's from nastygal.com, so nice and fast fashion. I got it online, so it was shipped. It's 97% polyester, 3% elastane. It has what we assume are plastic buttons, thread. Did not mean for this to open up, but I think it'll be fine. Some pockets here, and paper labels. So we thought we could use a GRS standard recycled poly. We thought to keep it woven just because to keep it maybe structured, but if you did want to change it to knit, then you maybe have some more, natural options there. And then for the kind of the elastic part of it, the elastane, maybe using an Invista recycled elastane.
Okay.
And then for the print, digital printing, help with water consumption. And then also with the print, this size of print is probably fine with the lining up on the side seams and whatnot. So you wouldn't want to go much bigger because then you have to think about that and then fabric consumption and all of that. Possibly even changing to a dolman sleeve rather than a set-in sleeve, depending on how it works out on the markers. For the buttons, what did we think for the buttons here? Possibly change out the buttons for maybe a more natural, maybe like a wood or something like that, rather than plastic. And then end of life, even if you know, you kind of got tired of these old buttons, you could really snazz it up with, you know, a metal button or something like that just on your own. It's manufactured in China. We've kind of thought to keep it there, make sure it's coming in on boat, help with emissions and whatnot. And then since it's online, compostable poly bags, making sure there's not any additional hang tags that aren't necessary. Maybe even doing a emission offset situation with shipping. Okay. And then since it is a good print, using the scraps for napkins or different things like that around the house, household items, things like that.
And turning it back into more recycled poly afterwards as well.
So looking at your group is design for cyclability. But the only question I would ask of you is, knowing where we're at with recycling polyester and the difficulty there, with recycling spandex, does this product need the spandex for right now? No. So that would be my only comment of, do you actually need the spandex in there at all, and could you make it more recyclable by eliminating
I don't
it?
even really feel it that much.
Right.
It's kind of tight, so.
Yeah. Anybody else have any comments, questions? No? Cool. All right, good job, guys. Watch your step. Who's presenting? You. Good.
Stand next to her with our lovely model.
Thank you.
So we chose this lovely Guess faux leather moto jacket. We kind of realized we picked a little bit of a hard one when we got into it. There's so many different components of it. The interior is 100% polyester, and then the outside is a rayon poly blend. So we kind of recognized from the get-go, if we were just going to try to redesign this without changing much about it at all, we could obviously just flip that polyester conventional to recycled polyester and do a recycled polyfill. But we went a completely different route and thought, what if we use natural fibers? So what we decided we didn't want to change about the product. What was iconic about it to us was that the seaming details really give it that moto feel. So we don't really feel like a moto jacket necessarily has to be leather or faux leather. It's really all about the construction of it that gives it that feel. What could be changed about it? So what it's made from. So instead of going the synthetic route, we decided to do a waxed cotton exterior. And we decided to just take a big chunk out of it, that it didn't necessarily need to be insulated. So we would just get rid of the polyfill, get rid of the polyester lining, but to make it more comfortable, do a cotton lining, a natural cotton lining, maybe brush it to make it soft. How it's made, we decided that because all of the pattern pieces were pretty small, it might be nice for marker efficiency, because if you do it the right way, you could sandwich them all in that marker. And then maybe we could use some of what we're saving from getting rid of all the construction of the quilted interior. It runs all the way through the sleeves. Maybe we could still keep our seaming details on the outside, because that's what we like so much about it. Currently it's made in China. We thought, you know what, let's leave it there, as long as we would make sure that our garment factory is either the same place that we're getting our materials from, or is as close as possible to eliminate the transportation impact. And we would want our factory to be a socially responsible factory, eco-certified, all those good things. We felt like the value of the product was pretty fairly distributed. And so our group was designed to reduce chemical impact, so hopefully all those things do.
Yep. Great. Yeah, I think that's great. If you're switching to cotton, I think I would recommend obviously organic cotton. And then the only problem I've seen with waxed cotton is that sometimes it does have a tendency to the wax transfer into the lining. So you'd want to make sure that your lining is thick enough to protect the wearer from the wax transfer. Yeah, great. And you guys, if you have comments or alternative suggestions, please feel free to jump in. Are you presenting?
No.
Oh.
Oh, sure you are. Hello, we are using the genuine leather Aritzia jacket, very cute. We hate to destroy the integrity of it, but in order to meet our requirements, we are going to change from genuine leather to a synthetic PU leather. So it was made in Morocco, so we assumed that the cow, a lot of them have come from Brazil or whatever. We're going to say this one was from Spain. Then it went to an Italian tannery. Then it was going to Morocco for cut and sew, and then to the United States for the distribution and customer use. But we're going to change it, and we're going to keep it in Spain, but we're going to use a synthetic leather. And for the synthetic leather, we're going to use a local TPU, but have the base being from the sequel, which is, I'm going to let you talk about this, Pam, because you're better about that.
Yeah, recycled polyester substrate made from plastic from Sequil. They're an organization that works with fishermen off of Spain's coast. All the garbage that they're collecting in their fishing nets, instead of just throwing it back in the water on the shore, there they have basically recycling centers to recycle that waste. And so, yeah, the PET plastic bottles go back into the recycled polyester substrate.
And then our lining will also change to 100% recycled from the same supplier. So we assumed that this one was not we assumed it was virgin polyester. For the design, we had two snaps, and then we had 8 zippers. So we're going to redesign it into a draped silhouette. So it will no longer need any trims, and it'll just be a drape open item. And then we are going to, let's see, where else will we go? Labeling.
Oh, yeah.
For the labeling, we were going to remove the one at the neck and the side, and we were going to do screen printing with eco-friendly dyes, and talk a little bit about the story about how it's using the sustainable materials, and try to put it in there also about Sequel and the fishing nets to be able to educate the consumer on that. And for our labor, we were wanting to use Fair Label out of Spain, to be able to use, like, maybe there's some nonprofit organizations that use labor, like maybe at risk or employees, to be able to help the unemployment rate, which we know is high in Spain. And for our marketing, we were going to use digital marketing instead of using any paper materials there. And for our bags, we were going to use also recycled polyester for the bags on it. And energy we were going to reduce because we're not shipping to as many locations to go from the materials to the ultimate manufacturer.
Cool.
Oh yeah, we looked up the MSI score.
Right. Yes, and we were at 134 for leather for HIG, and we got down to 49 by using the PU on a recycled substrate.
Good work.
So, that's it.
And we didn't actually talk about this earlier, but one of the biggest impacts on life cycle for a lot of garments is trims. This one has an exceptional amount of metal, so I think that's huge as well. Usually that's more of an impact in the accessories space, but in this case you essentially have accessory grade trims, so that's good. And what about, did you talk about end of life?
Oh,
no.
For the original, we were recycling at a donation center like Goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
This one we were going to continue to recycle, and then if that material could be used, could be recycled into like hard goods or furniture.
Cool. Great. Comments? No? You guys are so overwhelmed with your original design, you can't deal with anyone else's at this point. It's fair. I didn't mention this, but does anyone have to leave exactly 2 o'clock? Okay, good timing. Yeah? So maybe your group will go next, if that's okay? Because we're almost there. Yeah?
Hey guys, we also did a jacket. It's a popular thing. Our jacket was originally a wool jacket that, if you look at the HIG score for that, I didn't, but I know that it's really high. I know alpaca is like $2.95 or something like that, considering the sources of the they have to eat and all that stuff that the sheep do. So what we decided to do is open source our the shell material from other material manufacturers. They're just kind of mill ends. We would just need 5-yard pieces at a time. We wanted to do a post-industrial waste liner on the inside that was hopefully from a recycled poly manufacturing material.
Any color.
Any color. Since we're doing kind of mill-end scraps for the outside too, it's going to be kind of a mix and match for colors, putting things together. We're reducing the trims to just one button, so just have a single closure point. We wanted to do the construction so that it was easy to deconstruct the materials at the end of life. We wanted to be able to manufacture it here since we're kind of picking and choosing the materials that come in, and potentially have it hand finished by people who can, I can't remember something about being able to keep
artisanal stitches and hand finishing.
Okay.
And we also have reduced it to 2 sizes only.
Ah.
So it's kind of
That's a big one.
one size fits most and the other size fits the rest.
So 0 to 14 and then 14 up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we also
Cool.
wanted to use whatever scraps we had to help form our shoulder pads.
So the
Somehow.
pattern pieces will be the same, so they have the same lines. The excess will go into the shoulder pads.
No, scrapped reversible.
Yeah.
So each item will be one fabric, but they'll be one-of-a-kind pieces, essentially.
One color on the
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
Any color.
Any color on the inside. Great. Very cool. Well done. Yeah. Okay, and then. Sorry, we're just going to let them go next because someone has to leave. Or did you have to leave it too as well? No. Okay, so yeah, they're going to go and then you guys will go. We'll switch. Or you're in this group. Ah, sorry. Are you presenting?
I guess.
Okay, I'm going to stand next to you so I can
Okay,
get your
great.
voice on the.
So we chose, our group had, hold it, number 7 design for ethical production. So what can't be changed about this product, what makes this iconic design-wise. So we liked the shape of it, is that right? We liked the size of it. We liked the size of it because it could be used, we could partner with lateral industries like airlines manufacturers, automobile manufacturers, and actually even give them a little bit of cachet and do like a collab in that way.
Cool.
And so, we would we would use their scraps. If anybody has anything to input, and you wrote the notes, so we're going to use the scraps from lateral industries like the webbing, the PU. We were going to stay with this material, I believe, or
scraps.
Yeah,
We're
the
gonna-
dead stock.
We're gonna use the dead stock.
Yes, but it could be the PU, or it could even be leather dead stock. We do something.
Sofa manufacturers.
Yep.
Interior.
Something that is, that's on the floor and the scraps.
Okay.
Yeah,
Small pieces.
And so that's going to be speaking to like smaller scale runs and more one of a kind aesthetic, but that's also really trending right now. And people don't want to feel like they're just grabbing something off the rack, and they want to feel some amount of individuality, but maybe stay with the iconic shape, which makes it relatable. So,
And I think it was like, and what Danielle was saying is how we're trying to sort of partner with another large company that may not have the impression of being ethical, and then spinning that so we can collaborate together.
Like the airlines or.
like,
Right.
I'm putting it out there right now.
Maybe we'll take the individuals' names off the video, though.
Oh,
Keep that
sorry.
internal.
I'm sorry.
Automotive industry.
Yeah.
Get whatever.
Cool.
And so for the lining, again, it was another lateral, if there's a better word for that, a lateral industry. We were thinking that a home deck industry has this type of a fabrication, like shower curtains, that would be really user-friendly, slick, easy to wash, bright colors. So you can see all your
ideas.
things. It's not, you don't have to dig against a black lining, etc. So. Does anybody else have any input they want to shout out?
We were just saying an overall reduction in the trims.
Mhm.
Don't necessarily need all of these metal pieces and the internal zipper for the internal pocket. And then we had talked about like partnering with companies that make like horse tack for maybe trims that they didn't work out for whatever reason.
Great. And you could also offer replacement parts or repairs because it is convertible, right? As well.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Cool.
Good idea. And we like the idea of local manufacture. We like the idea of partnering with maybe smaller shops even, upholstery shops. We like the idea of creating those type of small scale relationships. I mean, I'm speaking for everybody. But
Great.
And
Yeah.
was there something else?
think
No.
you covered all the bases.
Good.
Good ideas. I like all the upcycling options coming out of here. Great. Yeah.
Okay,
Good
thank
job. Thank you. And the accessory. Well done. Okay. You look like you're ready to walk out the door.
I know. Okay, so sorry, I'm paying my parking. Okay. So we decided to just go ahead and analyze this bag. So it's a leather bag. It's Italian leather, made in Italy by Creatures of Comfort. So that's a New York-based company that is no longer in business. But anyway, so we were thinking there are obviously a lot of alternatives to leather now. So like a lot of people love leather, and leather's not necessarily terrible because people eat meat, and that's not going to stop anytime soon. So there are companies like the one that we were mentioning, Pergamena in upstate New York, that uses all the byproduct leather from the meat industry, and they actually have really nice, supple, high-quality leather.
If I can interrupt you there,
Yeah.
that's actually an anomaly in the leather industry because most leather doesn't come as a byproduct of the meat industry. Pergamena in New York does, so they do use all the leather from cows that are being used for meat, but for the most part, it's not really a byproduct of food. They're separate resources. So in this case, I like the solution because it's local.
And it's local,
And it's local,
exactly.
yeah.
So if we wanted to stick with the leather and also leather, does age well. So, on the kind of the latter end, it is sustainable in that way. But we had some alternatives. We haven't made any decisions. So the alternative was the plant.
Yeah, we talked about a leather that's on the sample table back there, and it's something welded.
Yeah, natural fiber welding. It's one of the samples, so you should go check it out. It's a plant oil-based alternative to PU or PVC. It's biodegradable depending on, it's a coating, so it can be placed on a variety of different natural fibers. So you can choose the base. It's also scented, which is lovely. Smell them, you can smell them. But yeah, it's as an alternative to leather, it's a non-synthetic alternative, so it's plant, not plastic.
That or like a fly leather, like a recycled scrap leather turned into a consistent substrate. In addition, our piece is on the biomimicry side, so we talked about how we could get the cut pattern to be similar to this, but maybe with less seams, to be something similar to like a goat skin bag, more in design, and that would reduce some of the impact of having more sewing, as well as maybe making these edges raw instead of seamed. There's also a canvas, so it's lined with leather as well, and then there's a canvas pocket on the inside. So we talked about maybe removing that lining. In addition, these metal features that are accessories on there, we talked about resmelting certain metals and recycling those from industrial waste to create those accessories on the bag, like the zippers, the button.
And do you need them all?
No, we were going to say we could also totally do away with these. Like these
Or
were
reduce them, maybe.
Yeah, like I mean, maybe a zipper inside is nice, but like I think this could just be eliminated. Wasn't like a selling point at all. And what else? We also were distracted at the product table. Full disclosure, so we spent about 50% of our time over there.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
But that was so.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks, guys. All right. Where are the activists? Yeah, number 8. Sorry. Oh, you're at 9?
Oh, wait, no,
You're 8. Yeah. The last 3 I always call the activists, so you're kind of in that category.
So we were redesigning this bomber jacket. We thought that the things that were really intrinsic about it was that it was printed, that it was lightweight and seasonal, and that it was like this classic bomber shape. we're, trying to get after designing to reduce the need to consume. So we wanted to be able to talk to our consumer and like create that emotional connection with them, create transparency in our design process, make sure that our jacket is very useful, and we probably have to raise the price point to do that. We wanted to keep the classic shape and make it reversible so that it's more useful and you wear it different ways than have to have less. We wanted to redesign the pockets so that they're more usable.
Can you show the pockets? Yeah.
They are really small and they don't fit very much, so like to be able to fit your phone or your wallet. We'd also put a closure on them so that you can close your pockets. We wanted to take out the elastic and make them snap so that it would be adjustable and you can wear it different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then for fabrication, our idea was to kind of have a classic bomber shape that we would produce season after season, but to have like a fabric story every season that could be dead stock. It could be a print that the consumer could design, but it would all be under it would be natural fibers, it would be durable, easy to wash, and it would always have a print on one side and a solid on the other. As far as, and we thought that would kind of make it really like unique and limited edition, so that like it would have more connection with our consumer, and that they would have that, cherish it kind of. We wanted to, it's currently manufactured in Morocco, but we wanted to move manufacturing to LA to make it more transparent and make it more accessible to the consumer. But by creating the same jacket over and over, we think that would help with, reducing price of.
And then the price point would be on the higher end. This one was $32, but we were thinking about $350. But
Great.
we decided on that price point because we believe that when people pay more, they appreciate the clothes more, so they keep it for longer.
Okay.
And Afterpay exists, which is great.
Yes, so that would be a feature.
And you're getting 2 jackets in one at this point,
Yeah.
so cool. Great. The reversibility of it alone is a big impact, so that's good. Cool. Comments, questions? No? Good job. $350. Love it. Yeah. All right. This jacket. Are you talking? You are.
I'm talking.
Okay. I'm going to stand next to you so we can hear you.
So we're group number 9, and we got together and we started a company. Our idea came from this jacket, and the idea really is that to create festival clothing that can be rented. So in this design, it's made from 90% polyester and elastane. So we were going to change that fabric completely and use a really cool mushroom fabric that's back there, if you guys have seen it. It basically looks just like this, and we're thinking that any waste from it can be composted.
Yep.
So we'd create a whole concept around that, festival clothes that are made from mushrooms and all that. So don't do it. But basically that, these are really fun, so we want to keep that on there. And we've thought to just do it in silk or a natural fiber.
For the tassels.
Yeah. Source the trim for natural fiber. Zippers out of recycled metal.
And recycled tape
Yes,
also is possible. Yeah.
And it's unlined, so we don't have to work with that.
Can you explain the premise behind the rental part of it?
Because we're group number 9, we wanted to create a life cycle, that it's all circular, and if we're going to design something, that we're responsible for it.
Yeah.
So.
And she had the great idea of having an app, at festivals, where you can actually go pick it up at the festival, use it, and then drop it off, and then maybe take the same piece and alter it like for every season, for every festival, but something like that.
Yeah, because we know like for festivals you might wear it once and you probably bought it like Forever 21 or something, and that's like a big trend. So how can we make it more sustainable but still keep it on trend?
We'd probably it probably wouldn't be cheap to make, but since we're renting it out, it can always produce.
Benefit. Yeah. And plus, festival goers don't have to bring their suitcase to the festival anymore. Yeah. Cool.
So what else? About manufacturing, the fabric is from Italy, so we would probably have that shipped, and then make it close to the festival. So like Coachella is California, so we would probably make.
Yeah. Or you could license the technology and grow the mushrooms here. Make your fabric here in California too. If you're thinking,
We want to grow stuff.
Yeah.
Have a garden at Coachella, like that you see come from the actual garments.
Oh.
It could be an installation.
Yeah.
Whole thing. Whole
Love it.
experience.
Oh yeah, we thought about a lot.
Good thinking, guys.
And I think that's it.
Yep.
Right? Is there anything else?
We sort of talked about too, like removing some of the pockets, changing the sizes so that it's so we wouldn't have to make as many different sizes. This has a little bit more tailored fit to it, so
that's better for renting.
Yeah.
So you could also, like, if you're picking it up at the festival and you're not sure about sizing, you don't have to worry about
Yeah.
about that.
Great. Great. Lovely. Yes.
I just want to make an observation.
Yeah.
I don't know if the group is aware that it's actually happening, that people are picking up from like fast fashion companies at Coachella.
We don't need it.
They're adding all over Instagram about it right now, where they deliver to the festival. So
Fast fashion companies are different.
So
Amazon.
Sorry.
Amazon.
Well, it's like
yeah, they have the Amazon.
pretty young thing.
Yeah.
No, don't worry about it.
That's actually happening.
It's really sensitive, I think.
I feel like people would actually
We're gonna make the app and you'll watch it.
Let us know when you launch this company, please. All right, last group, right? Is there one more? Yeah. And then I'm going to give you all time to go and browse the fabrics. If you have questions about them, I'm happy to answer because I know there's not information on everything back there, just on some of it. I also left my business cards back there, so please grab one. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions after this. Yeah.
So this is the garment that we chose. It's a poly and spandex blazer with some detail on the side, some trim, which is also poly. And we decided to remake it with a natural fiber, probably linen, so that it would maintain the same sort of hang, since it's a less constructed item. So it would hang similarly, and that the spandex wasn't really necessary. And yeah, we would obtain.
Yeah, this one was manufactured in China. We decided that we were going to bring manufacturing to Puerto Rico, creating jobs that are really needed right now at the island, and partner with the ethical manufacturer on the island.
I have one for you if you need it.
And building the proximity to the U.S. market eliminates emission, which will also lower the cost of fuel as well as double win. And then we're going to talk about
So yeah, for the activism part, we went the storytelling route, and we decided that we would, so for our offline customers, so customers that come in store, we would give them the VR experience and take them through the whole supply chain of the product, so they can see where their where their materials are coming from, who's making it, the process, so that they develop a deeper connection with the product. And then for online customers.
Yeah, we talked about having like a lot of transparency when you buy the product. So kind of like what Everlane does, but like diving deeper. So actually talking about living wages as well. And then we weren't sure, like we were thinking after you buy it, but basically like when you buy it as well, having like a short, maybe like 1 minute video sent to you, like of the person who sewed the garment, and like a little bit about their life. So to bring awareness to that.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, and if you're doing it in Puerto Rico, you'd be able to go regularly and do those videos, and yeah, cool, love it. Anything else? No? All right. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to leave some contact information up on the screen if you want to grab it. But then also feel free to grab the card and then some information of those. I'm going to stick around as well for questions if you have specific questions you want to come up. Yeah. Am I going to share the slides? No, but I will share the resources from the slides. So just a series of links. Yeah. Thank you, guys. It was great having you here.